Davy Allison truly hated him more than anyone. In NASCAR, rivalries happen all the time. Tempers flare, wrecks happen, and harsh words get thrown around in the heat of the moment. But with Davy Allison, this one felt different. This wasn't just frustration. It wasn't just two drivers fighting for the same piece of track. According to people around the sport, Davy Allison truly hated him more than anyone else. And that says a lot about a man who was known for his toughness, focus, and quiet intensity. Because Davy wasn't the kind of driver who wasted energy on drama. If he had a problem with you, there was usually a reason, a real one, something personal, something that kept building every single time they crossed paths. So how did it get this bad? What happened between Davy Allison and the one man who got under his skin more than anyone else? That's where this story gets serious. Before you can understand why this rivalry burned so hot, you have to understand who Davy Allison really was. He wasn't loud for attention. He wasn't one of those drivers who picked fights just to make headlines. Davy carried himself with a different kind of presence, calm, tough, and completely serious once the helmet went on. He came from racing blood, carried the Allison name with pride, and drove like every lap meant something bigger than just points. That's what made his anger stand out. When a driver like Davy got pushed to the edge, people noticed. Because this was a man who believed in earning respect on the track, not begging for it off the track. He could race hard, take hits, and move on. But this situation didn't fade. It kept growing. And little by little, what started as tension became something much darker, something that looked a lot more like real hatred than simple competition. At first, it didn't look like the kind of feud that would turn explosive. Like so many NASCAR rivalries, it began with small moments, hard racing, tight space, and the feeling that one driver kept crossing the line just a little too often. But for Davy Allison, those moments started to pile up. One aggressive move became two. One incident became a pattern. And once Davy believed a driver was racing him with disrespect, he never forgot it. That's when the tension stopped being accidental and started feeling personal. You could see it in the way Davy raced around him. Less patience, less trust, and a whole lot more edge. Every time they ended up near each other, something felt ready to snap. Fans could sense it. The garage could sense it. Because this wasn't just about losing positions anymore. Davy Allison had started to believe this driver wasn't just competing with him, he was targeting him. Then came the moment that changed the entire tone of the rivalry. Every great feud has that one incident. The one where tension stops simmering and finally boils over. For Davy Allison, this was the point where frustration turned into something far more intense. Whatever respect had survived between them before that moment was gone. It wasn't just the contact itself, it was what that contact meant. To Davy, this wasn't hard racing anymore. This was reckless, unnecessary, maybe even deliberate. And once that thought entered his mind, there was no going back. From that point on, every battle between them carried extra weight. Every bump looked worse. Every move felt loaded with bad blood. You could see it in Davy's reaction. Not just anger in the heat of competition, real resentment. The kind that lingers after the engines go quiet. And once it reached that stage, this rivalry stopped being business. It became personal. What made this feud so memorable wasn't just the wrecks or the tension on race day. It was the way Davy Allison seemed to carry that anger with him long after the moment had passed. Most drivers could explode in the heat of battle and cool off later. Davy didn't seem wired that way when it came to this man. The frustration stayed. And that's when people around the sport started realizing this wasn't a normal rivalry anymore. There was something in Davy's reactions that felt deeper than ordinary competition. The look on his face, the way he talked about respect, the way he raced when that car showed up in his mirror, it all pointed to one thing. He felt crossed, not just challenged, but genuinely wronged. And for a driver built on pride, toughness, and control, that kind of feeling was dangerous. Because once Davy believed someone had crossed that line, forgiveness was never going to come easy. NASCAR has always been full of grudges, payback, and drivers who couldn't stand each other. But this rivalry felt different because it never came across like simple trash talk or temporary frustration. With Davy Allison, it looked personal in a way that made people pay attention. This wasn't about putting on a show for cameras. It wasn't about one bad afternoon and a few angry comments. The tension had history behind it, and every new incident only made that history heavier. What made it even more intense was Davy's personality. He wasn't reckless with his emotions. So when he kept showing that same edge toward one specific driver, it told everyone something serious was underneath it. He could compete hard with plenty of people and still move on. But here, the bitterness stayed alive. That's why many fans believe this was the one feud that truly got under Davy Allison's skin more than any other. The clearest sign that this feud was real came from the people watching it unfold. Fans noticed it. Broadcasters noticed it. And inside the garage, people could feel that something between these two drivers had gone beyond normal race day tension. While when they were near each other on the track, there was always this sense that anything could happen. One small move, one bump in the wrong corner, and the whole situation could explode again. That kind of reputation doesn't appear out of nowhere. It builds because everyone around the sport starts seeing the same pattern. Davy Allison simply did not race this man the way he raced everyone else. There was less trust, less patience, and a lot more emotion. Even when nothing major happened, the tension was still there, sitting just under the surface. And that's why this rivalry became so unforgettable. It didn't need constant shouting to feel dangerous. The hostility was already obvious to anyone paying attention. Years later, but people still talk about this rivalry for one reason. It revealed a side of Davy Allison that fans rarely saw so clearly. He was always known as tough, talented, and fiercely competitive. But this feud showed just how deeply he took respect, loyalty, and the code of racing. When he felt that code had been broken, he didn't just brush it off and move on. He carried it with him, and that made the conflict feel more real than most rivalries ever do. That's why so many fans believe this was the one driver Davy Allison truly hated more than anyone else. Not because of one moment, but because of everything that kept building between them over time. And in a sport built on speed, risk, and pressure, sometimes the most unforgettable stories aren't just about who won the race. They're about the grudges that never really died. And maybe that's what made Davy Allison so unforgettable. He wasn't driven by noise. He was driven by pride, principle, and the belief that respect on the racetrack had to be earned. So when one driver pushed him too far, crossed too many lines, and kept turning competition into conflict, Davy never looked at him the same way again. This wasn't just another NASCAR rivalry built on headlines. It was deeper than that, more personal, more bitter. And in the eyes of many fans, it became the one feud that brought out the strongest hatred Davy Allison ever showed toward another driver. The scary part is, when a man like Davy reaches that point, you know something serious happened. Because he didn't hate easily. But when he did, everyone could see it.